Well, hello. Welcome once again to Stuff and Things, where I like to talk about stuff and occasionally things. I'm your good friend Bradley, and today you find me trudging through a rather post-apocalyptic looking parking area. I just recorded my review of Pipe Force episode 2 here. Did I say it's a Sunday Stuff and Things? It's a Sunday Stuff and Things. It's 4th of July weekend. 4th of July was on Thursday. It is now Saturday as I'm recording this, and I thought, hey, I'll get out. I'll do some videos in the park, maybe do my Pipe Force episode 2 video in the park. So I drove down to the waterfront area here in Bellingham, but because it's 4th of July weekend and because it is actually hot, summer has finally begun here in the Pacific Northwest. We're getting into the 80s, which is pretty hot for here. I know it's not hot for the rest of the country, but we've just been in like the 60s, barely into the low 70s through most of the spring and the early summer. So this is the first time that it's gotten, over 80 degrees. So people are freaking out. They're all over the place. Everywhere I went in the park, there were just too many people around for me to do a pipe video. And so I recorded it in this little parking lot. But now I am walking around and I'm trying to get over my embarrassment of talking to myself into a camera while I walk around. So that's what we're doing here for this Sunday Stuff and Things. We're gonna wander around, we'll discuss stuff and things, and then maybe I'll find a place where I can set up and actually talk a little bit more freely. I'm also trying out my little, vlogging setup. I've got my GoPro here on a little selfie stick, which looks ridiculous, I know. But then I also have my wireless mic and I'm using it without my plug-in lapel mic, which is what I usually use. And this is nice because I don't have to have any wires on me at all, because normally I'd have the lapel mic with the wire down to this receiver that's actually right here. But the receiver has a mic on it as well. And I put a little wind thing on it. So hopefully this sounds okay. I'm sure it's not gonna sound as good as the actual lapel mic sounds. But yeah, just thought I'd try this out. So GoPro, wireless Rode mic. This is something I might want to try to do a little bit more often in the future if I get over the embarrassment of walking around like this with the camera. So anyway, we have many stuff and things to talk about on this Sunday Stuff and Things, including upcoming videos, things that you can look forward to on Stuff and Things and on working. We're going to get into what I've been reading and watching lately. I have been completely blown away by the John le Carre or Le Carre novels that I have read recently, and the BBC series, 2 series or mini-series from the late 70s, early 80s that I've been watching as well. And I just have to tell you about them. I think they're fantastic. So it's going to be kind of a mini review on a series of books I've been reading. And then of course we will have your questions, comments, and feedback in hashtag #AskStuffandThings. So let's get into it. All right, so what can you look forward to on Stuff and Things and working? Well, this coming week, we are going to have the first impressions video for Pipe Force episode 2, Sergeant Kimball. This is a blend that I was pretty excited about and am still pretty excited about because it has some very unique flavors that I have never tasted in a pipe blend before. This is after 10 years of doing reviews, done a ton of reviews. I've had a lot of blends, and this has stoved Catarini and also Catarini Perique. And I'm pretty sure I've had stoved Catarini in a blend before, or just maybe normal Catarini. This is a oriental varietal from Greece, pretty rare. But when you do a Perique process to Catarini, it makes it very, very different. It's just a flavor that I've never really had before. And so that first impressions video is coming up this Wednesday. The following Wednesday, we're gonna do the review on the Oliver Charles yak wool sweater. A really cool sweater that I got sent to me. I think it's the only article of clothing I have that has yak fibers in it. And it's pretty cool, pretty unique stuff. So check that video out as well. The week after that will be the Pipe Force episode 2 review. I just recorded that, so you'll be able to see me out here in the sun. The week after that, we may do a follow-up to some photography stuff. In the last week's Sunday Stuff and Things, we talked about some of my street photography. People were giving me their opinions. I might do something with that, or maybe something else photography related. I definitely want to do some more photography stuff. And then I still have reviews that I need to do of the NYX Pullman boots. Like, there are just so many things. I don't know. I'm never going to catch up. I have a huge line or a huge queue of videos that I need to get ready. So don't worry. You will never run out of content on this channel. So I think several weeks ago, I mentioned that I had started reading the John le Carre novels, the Smiley series of novels. I started with, which one did I start with? Let me sit down here. I want to take off my backpack too because I'm starting to sweat like crazy. Okay, that's a little better. So I started with The Spy Who Came In From the Cold. That is Le Carre's third novel. It's the first one that people said really caught on, the one that he became kind of famous for. He had two novels before that that featured the character of George Smiley, who is a spy in his version of MI6, which they call the circus in the novels. I think the very first novels take place in maybe the late 50s, early 60s. The Spy Who Came In From the Cold was written in around 63, takes place in that era as well. It is the first one that is really focused on Cold War spying, getting behind the Iron Curtain, a lot of things that I find really fascinating. After that, I read the next novel in order that he wrote involving these characters, and that was The Looking Glass War. Again, just a really fascinating look at Cold War era spying. It's very bleak, kind of depressing, but super interesting. Not a lot of action in these novels, but it doesn't really matter. The characters are so interesting. Just the way he builds the world that he is trying to tell you about is just fascinating. After that, I read the first novel in what is often called the Carla series, or the Quest for Carla, or the Carla trilogy, Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. I had seen the 2011 movie starring Gary Oldman many times. I love that film. One of my favorite movies of the last, 15 years. And then did I read the novel first or did I watch the BBC series? I think I read the novel first. The novel is fantastic. It's hard for me to say which one of these Le Carre novels that I've read so far I like the most, but Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy might be up there. It is just a fascinating look at British intelligence service in the early 70s, that Cold War era. It involves a mole that has been placed in British intelligence by Carla, who is kind of the shadowy figure. I think they call it Moscow Center, so the Moscow Intelligence Service, and he has his own kind of directorate, the 13th Directorate within Moscow Center. He is this kind of superhuman intelligence mastermind who has placed a mole very highly up in British intelligence service. And George Smiley, who had been forced out of the intelligence service a little bit previous to the beginning of the events of the book, he is called back in because he's an outsider to try to track down who the mole is in British intelligence service. And it's super fascinating. I think many people have probably seen the film. If you haven't, you should definitely watch it. But it is an absolutely fantastic novel. After that, I read The Honorable Schoolboy, which again is fantastic. It starts a little more slowly. I had a little more trouble getting into that novel, but once I did, it goes to so many other unique places. It takes place, much of it takes place in Hong Kong. And again, if you think about this is Hong Kong in the mid-70s, so it's still a British colony at that time. And so there are all sorts of interesting things going on about that. It's funny because they talk about the handover that was supposed to take place in, was it 97 that happened? And how the communist Chinese government was supposed to, leave it its autonomy. Obviously, they did not do that. But many of the British characters in the novel are like, oh, the handover will never take place. It'll always be a British colony. But it takes place there. It takes place a lot in other parts of Southeast Asia, in Cambodia, Vietnam, Laos. Just really interesting era because at the time the Vietnam War was just ending. In fact, I think it ends in the novel. And just I don't know, fascinating point of history, fascinating stuff going on within this novel. It involves a British agent who is sent to Hong Kong after all the fallout from Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. So many agents were blown because of the Russian mole who was in the service. They're kind of starting from scratch, and this is their attempt to get some really important and really interesting intelligence to sort of bring the intelligence service back onto the stage, to curry favor with the CIA, the American intelligence service, as they call the cousins, or they call the American intelligence service the cousins, they call the Russian intelligence service the neighbors. There's all sorts of cool jargon in these novels. And again, really bleak story, kind of depressing, but just endlessly fascinating. And then after that, the continuation or the conclusion of the Carle trilogy is Smiley's people. So again, George Smiley is retired. He is not in the intelligence service anymore, but a former agent of his is murdered, and he is called in yet again to find out. Ostensibly, it's just to kind of sweep all of it under the carpet, but he finds some very troubling things that have to do with this murder, and he starts investigating it on his own, and it turns into this giant conspiracy and the final showdown with his arch rival Russian counterpart, Carle. It is a fantastic wrap up to this entire series. George Smiley is not always the main character in all of these novels, but in Smiley's People, the entire novel pretty much is narrated from his point of view. There are a few chapters that deal with other characters where it's from their perspective. Most of the novel is him going to visit somebody in a room and talking to them for several chapters. But it is endlessly entertaining and endlessly fascinating. Again, there is not a ton of action that goes on in this book, but it is just so absorbing. I couldn't put it down. So I've read 5 of the Le Carre novels so far, and I have loved every single one of them. I just started this novel. This is A Perfect Spy, so this does not involve the same characters from all the George Smiley books. It still involves British intelligence. I've read 10 pages so far. I just started this, so I don't know exactly what's going to go on in here. I know that supposedly this is very autobiographical. The main character's father in this book was inspired by Le Carre's father. He's actually David Cornwell is the author's real name. Le Carre is a pseudonym, a pen name. So I'm really looking forward to this. This is apparently, a fantastic book, very dense. Philip Roth says the best English novel since the war. So that's pretty high praise. Really looking forward to this. But I want to recommend, if you have never read Le Carre, you should read Le Carre. And I would suggest starting, now there are 2 Smiley novels that take place before the ones where I started. There is, what is it called? I think A Call for the Dead and then A Murder of Quality are the first 2 Smiley novels. I will read those eventually, but a lot of people say that you should start with The Spy Who Came In From the Cold, even though George Smiley is not a huge part of that book. He is in it, but it mostly deals with a character called Alec Leamis, kind of a disillusioned spy. Just some fascinating stuff going on in East Germany behind the Iron Curtain. But I would definitely check that book out first. I think it's a really great introduction to this world and these characters, and it is fantastic. It might be my second favorite. I don't know. I can't rank all these books yet. There was also a film version of it from 63, 64, 65 that I want to watch. I haven't watched that yet, but it's just called The Spy Who Came In From the Cold. I think it stars Richard Burton, if I'm not misremembering that. But then, after reading all these things, I found out that there was a BBC miniseries from 1978-79 starring Alec Guinness as George Smiley. And so I was fascinated to watch this because Le Carre said that once he had seen Alec Guinness playing the character of George Smiley, he thought that his portrayal was just perfect and he couldn't think of anyone else in that role other than Alec Guinness. Or he couldn't think of George Smiley as anyone other than Alec Guinness, even though he's probably a little old to play the character when he did. But I watched that BBC series directed by John Irvin, again, 78, 79, something like that. There are 6 parts in the American version, 7 parts in the original UK version. I think, you know, they're both on YouTube. I accidentally watched the American version first. I don't think it cuts out too much more than was in the British version, but it is definitely worth watching. Like I said, you can find it on YouTube. It is excellent, absolutely fantastic. And then I started watching and have not finished yet the British BBC version of Smiley's People. That has a different director. Some people say it's not quite as good, but it still stars Alec Guinness, and I'm enjoying it quite a bit. It does look more like a made-for-television production from, I think this was 81, 82. The version of Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy that they did on the BBC does seem more cinematic, and I don't know, it doesn't look like as much like television to me. So absolutely fantastic. Everything I've read by Le Carre so far has been just amazing. I think that if you have any interest in spy novels whatsoever, you should read these books. And even if you don't, even if you just like, if you like good prose and good characterization, these novels are fantastic and they are not to be missed. And I'm happy that there's still quite a few more that I can read at some point. I think there's maybe like, well, there's the first two Smiley novels that I haven't read yet. And then I think there's one that he wrote all the way up in like 2017. And then there's another one, or no, maybe there's one, I don't know. I think there's two more that he's peripherally involved with, and it involves some of the same characters. Unfortunately, I've seen that they're now, I guess maybe it's Le Carre's estate or whatever has licensed these characters because there is a new novel coming out in 2024 with a different author, and I hate it when people do that. I'm probably not going to read that. But anyway, anything involving George Smiley, written by John Le Carre, I highly recommend, and I had to tell you about it. All right, gang. But now, it is time for hashtag #AskStuffandThings. Remember, if you have a question for me and you would like it answered on the Sunday Stuff and Things, you can tweet at SAT Bradley with the hashtag #AskStuffandThings. Or if you are a Patreon supporter, you can write to me via Patreon and go right to the front of the line. You can hit that super thanks button under this video and go right to the front of the line. Or you can leave questions, comments, and feedback in the comment section of my YouTube videos. First, via YouTube, we have a question from @SlavaT, who says, "Hi, how are your Pullmans doing? Do you have anything to share? I'm interested in how the heel cup is built on this model. Does it have a rigid structural spacer made of vegetable tanned leather, like on their other boots?" I just included this because I definitely do intend to do a full review of the NYX Pullman engineer boots. I've done two videos so far, one where I was explaining the whole custom ordering process, and then a second video where I unboxed them and tried them on for the first time. I've been waiting for them to look really broken in and used, and they still don't really look really used yet. I've worn them a lot. I've worn the heel down a little bit, but there's still plenty of meat left on that bone. And they're comfortable, they're broken in, but they still look really fresh. So I was waiting for that patina to develop before I did the review, but I need to do it soon regardless. They're just amazing. I love them. That'll be a little preview for you. I absolutely love them. And as far as I know, they do have the same vegetable tan leather heel counter that they have in their other boots. So we have some feedback from last week's Sunday Stuff and Things. This is when I was talking about those photos. If you haven't seen that episode, and we're gonna start talking about some of the feedback from that episode, you should go back and watch last week's Sunday Stuff and Things where I showed you from some of my street photography. We had our good friend @Ryan McFadin and a Patreon supporter, thank you Ryan, who says, "Thanks for sharing your photos. There were some really great ones. I'd say the punk rock couple was by far my favorite. I'd love to see some low f-stop shots. It seems like most of these are stopped down pretty high. I think adding some depth of field to your portraits would go a long way in making them stand out, thinking in particular about the punk couple shot. Great work though, man." Thank you Ryan very much. This is an interesting comment because a lot of people have been mentioning this. Just saying, oh, you should be shooting at f2, f2.8. You do want to do that sometimes when you're doing portraiture to blur out the background and put more focus on your subject. But with street photography in particular, you're taking split second, I'm shooting probably at like 1/800th of a second a lot of the time. And I'm shooting in high apertures like f8, f11, because I'm trying to get things in focus. because when you are doing street photography, you're not taking a portrait, you're taking a split-second shot of a moving subject. And if you have a super narrow depth of field, which you have with the low f-stop with like an f2, it's very difficult to get a moving target in focus. And you also want to show the environment that the person is moving in, because that's kind of part of the whole street photography thing. With that particular shot he was talking about, there's a couple inside a coffee shop. I was stopped down, or I was opened up to about f2, f2.8 because I was in a darker indoor area. So I actually did have a pretty wide open aperture there. But typically, yeah, I'm trying purposefully to shoot at f11 if I can. And I might, jack up my ISO to get it so I can be stopped down to f11, because I am trying to get the widest depth of field as possible. Next we have at Josh Stivers, 9042. Nice work on these. Pick 5 reminds me of the character Pris from the 80s. That was this blonde girl I photographed in front of a mural from the 80s Blade Runner film. Pick 2 had a great story to go with it. Fantastic expressions. All in all, I definitely see some potential in your work, especially if you work on your cropping. Just my opinion. You've got an eye for capturing individuals in a subtle way. Thank you. I appreciated all the feedback. Really cool to hear. At Ledger and Lace says, I think you have a way of capturing a moment. Each of your photos tells a whole story. It's hard to pick just one. I like the dogs, but I think the father and daughter one is so expressive. Also, maybe Pink Guy might have someone related to him who has or had cancer. But that would be a weird question to ask. Maybe. Is there a meaning behind your pink vibe? Yeah, there's a guy who always wears a pink article of clothing, and I have noticed him in town and captured him sometimes. At Solar Labyrinth says, I know a little bit about photography, and I tend to enjoy landscapes and nature photography more so than photos of people on the streets. That said, my very unqualified opinion is, I mentioned some that really stand out. If I were flipping through many photographs, these would have been the ones that I would stop and appreciate more. All look professionally taken to my untrained eye. Rather than burying this in a Sunday video, it may gain more traction by having a separate one dedicated to it. Such as a series where you share and receive feedback on your own personal favorites. So yeah, I probably will do more just photography-focused videos in the future. At MJ Moody 2K said, I like number 8 the best. The angles of the roofs are almost disorienting and the gull taking off is captured perfectly. I also think I appreciate landscapes and such more than photos of people. At Kill Bill Gates says, I'm glad I moved out of Washington and back home to Florida. You hippies can keep that shit. Crying, laughing emoji. It's funny that he says you hippies as though I am a hippie. And you're absolutely right at Kill Bill Gates, because I know that in Florida there are no weird people at all. Florida is famous for having no strange people whatsoever. Now, we're about to have a train that's going to get very loud. Before that happens, I do want to mention, I asked for feedback. I really appreciate the feedback. What I was really interested in, the 10 pictures I showed on that video were 10 that I didn't pick. They were 10 that a friend of mine picked. And I find that useful because it shows me, okay, I know which ones I like the most, but I'm always curious to see what other people like. Okay, that's a train. It's loud. Hold on. All right, we'll see if we can continue here. So, seeing what other people decide that they like the most is fascinating to me, because obviously, I was reading through some of these comments, people say, well, I don't really like pictures of people. Okay, fair enough, that you're probably not gonna like the pictures that I'm taking of people. Some people prefer the pictures of animals. Some people like more architectural or landscape kinds of pictures. So I was just curious what pictures. Okay, we had to pause there so I could find some shade because my camera was overheating. And I probably could have gotten out of the sun myself too. I think I'm probably gonna be burned to a crisp by the time I get in today. Anyway, as I was saying, I find it interesting to see what people who aren't necessarily interested in street photography find interesting about my photography. I take the feedback, I find it interesting. I've said interesting many times. I don't necessarily, I'm not going to change what I'm doing necessarily based on what people say. A lot of people are talking about composition. That is good feedback, but you're also, you're taking these split-second pictures and you're trying to make an interesting composition as you're doing it, but you're moving, the people are moving, so that's something I'm definitely going to be working on. But it's just really interesting. I think in the Venn diagram of people who are into the pipe hobby and people who are into street photography, there's probably not a ton of overlap with that diagram, but that's why I wanted to ask you guys about it, because I think it's cool to get an outside opinion, or not even an outside opinion, but just, you know, you do stuff, you do your own work, and then it's hard to put yourself into the mind of someone who isn't necessarily into street photography. What will they pick out? What will they find appealing about any of your photographs? So thank you for that feedback. We also have feedback from the last video we posted on Wednesday, the 10-year anniversary of the Stuff and Things show. There were so many comments, so many people saying very nice things. I really appreciate all of those. I just picked out a few here because there were just too many. We first of all had a very generous super thanks from @RubberRing. Thank you so much for that. @RubberRing says, congratulations SAT, 10 years, it's been a wild ride so far. Thanks for all the great content, Bradley. Have a wee dram on me and we'll drink to another 10 years or 20. Thank you very much. We had @Mr. Gibson, 1837. This was awesome, Bradley. Love the walk down memory lane and the fun stats. If I think back to when I first found your channel, I instantly picture you in the Who shirt. Thank you so much for all these years of quality content. That was a good shirt. I wish I still had that. It just kind of disintegrated after a while. We have @Who's Afraid of Eric Nording. Started following you in late October of 2014, and I definitely remember you being here for a long time, my friend. And you're one of the reasons I got into pipe essing. We have @Chris Coffee. You are not annoying. I think I was annoying in those initial videos. Congratulations on 10 years. I don't remember exactly when I found your channel, but I was working a human resources job where all I was doing was running backgrounds on job applicants. As a result, I could listen to your pipe-related content while I was working. Thanks for all you do. I really appreciate you and your content. And thank all of you for watching for as long as you have, all the old guard who's been here forever, and all the new people who have found the channel. It's been really cool, and here's to 10 more years. But now, gang, it is time for the very best part of the show, and that is where we thank our Patreon supporters. Remember, if you would like to support the channels on Patreon, there is a link in the description box below, and it is much appreciated. Helps pay for the equipment that I use to make these videos, products for review, and basically it's kind of the only way I make any money on these things. So we have a drive for $105 supporters on Patreon. So if you feel as though you would like to support the content I do, there is a link in the description box below. But every week we shout out those who support the channels at $25 or more a month. The producers of Stuff and Things, people like Glenn Dunnington, Jason Buckner, Ryan McFadin, Arcturus, Ashes of the Phoenix, Jonathon Proctor, Kyle Waitkunas, ConCoClem, Charles Mowers, and the Friendly Piper. And of course, the Maniacs, the crazy people who support the channels at $100 a month, people like Bob Magee. And we'll never forget our dearly departed friend and Hall of Fame member, Peter Straub. Gang, it's been fun trying to do this kind of like vlog style Sunday video. I might do more of these in the future if I can get over my embarrassment of walking around talking to myself into a camera that I'm holding with a selfie stick. But there are so many things to look forward to on Stuff and Things and working. I didn't mention working episode, I can't remember if it was 30 or 31, that's out now. That shows stamped concrete, a really interesting and unique process of pouring concrete. So you should definitely check that out if you haven't watched it. And then the next video on working will be kind of actually, I guess we're about 2/3 done with this giant driveway when I show you the progress in that video. So you can see just that whole process, and then we'll have a video at the end where I show you this completed, giant, crazy, complicated driveway. So check that out. Lots of good stuff coming up on Stuff and Things. And I'm going to get inside before I have heat stroke because I am a weak Pacific Northwesterner and cannot stand the sun. But until next time, until we meet again, I've been your good friend Bradley. You've been the audience. This has been Stuff and Things on a pleasant Sunday Stuff and Things. I'll see you later.